Okay, so let me just repeat what I said. For chapter 13, there are two parts. The first part is a simple multiple choice type of quiz, which you're gonna have to complete. The second part is require some sort of access into a file, which there are some problems with that file. So I decided to delete that part of the assignment. So for chapter 15, all you have to do is the first part. Now, back to today's class, we are going to go through, and let me make sure that I get this correctly. We're going to go through chapter 15. Now, chapter 15, it's nothing really new about chapter 15. It's something we covered before, but we're just going to go through a little bit more details. Now, let me just tell you guys what we're going to be doing for the upcoming 3 classes that we have before the final exam. Next chapter, we're going to talk about signals and control signals in Linux operating system. The other chapter that follows that, we're going to talk about the some tools that we need to be familiar with and know how to use them. They're related to the regular expressions, SED, SED, and other tools again. We need to learn about those because they are very important when it comes to regular expressions. And then the final chapter, which is going to be the final week before the final exams, is going to be all about regular expressions. So those 3 chapters are kind of very important. I need you guys to attend as much as possible. I know a lot of you guys are traveling, a lot of you guys are busy and rely on those recorded videos, which I'm going to keep doing, of course. But attending is going to be important, especially when we're going to talk about regular expressions and control signals and all these kind of details. So with that being said, now we can start talking about today's class, and let me start recording or start sharing my screen. And I do believe that you guys can actually see my screen here. Let me just rearrange my windows. Okay, so let me just refresh your information about redirections and piping. We said, usually with commands, whenever you type a command like ls, for example, it's going to show you a list of all folders and file directories you have in the current folder or directory you are in. We said we can redirect the output, and instead of showing it on the screen, to be shown on a file, to be printed on a file. So if I come here and type ls-l to show it in the form of a table, and I can redirect it to a file, one of the files that I have here. And for example, I will go with file.txt. And now you can see there's no output here, but if I go cat file.txt, you'll see that it's going to show me the output there. And every time you redirect the output to a file again, it's going to erase whatever you have before and they just add it to it. And we went through all of these redirections. Now, we said there are 3 different types of redirection that we can deal with. We can redirect inputs, and we can redirect outputs, and we can redirect signals or error messages. Okay. And we said there are many different ways. We utilize the redirections also when we were working on the if statements. And for the redirection for the inputs, for example, if I want to sort or I want to count the number of words in a file, I can type WC and, for example, just type file.txt. And this is going to tell me how many lines do I have there, how many words do I have there, and how many characters out there, and it's going to tell me the name of the file. Or I can redirect the file using the command that I'm showing right now. Now, the difference between those 2 commands, as we said before, that the first one is going to take the file as an input. The second one is going to take the content of the file as an input without the file itself. So when you're going to print the result, you can see that it's not going to print the name of the file, because by redirecting the file here, we're simply taking the content of the file without using the file itself. So this is something we covered again, remember, when we talked about redirections. Also, we said we can redirect output messages and error messages together using the same sentence. I was using same command. For example, if I type ls, and I will just type, for example, let me just list everything here. I'm going to go to one of new folder, for example, ls new folder. Now, of course, this is going to show me what do I have in that new folder. But again, I can redirect it to another file. I will call it my, let's say here, names, or let me just go with README. But again, look at the options that I have here. And this is very, very important because this is going to be something we're going to be covering here. I can put and here, and that simply implies that if the command is going to execute with no errors, then the result is going to be stored in README. And if there's an error message, it's simply going to be stored inside that file. So the error message is going to be stored inside that file. So this is, again, how we redirect the outputs or the error messages to a file if we want to. And this is all, as I said, has been covered before. And now if I go cat readme, it will show me the files that I have in that folder. And if I go and try to make a mistake, for example, I will just say new folder, oh, wait a minute, 22. Let's see what's going to happen in a case like that. You can see there's nothing shown on the screen, but if I cat it, you will see that it's showing me an error message as this folder doesn't exist. So this is something, again, we talked about. I'm just giving you a refreshment about these topics. And let me show you another option that we have. I can actually append and add results to the exist. So instead of erasing whatever the content we have in the file, we can just add to it. So previously, README contained the error message. And now I fixed the problem and I said, show me the content of that new folder. And now if you see here, it's showing me the error message plus the actually files and folders that we have inside that directory. So all of this, again, is just refreshment for what we covered, and we just kind of keep talking here. We said we have a very, very special file called a null inside the diff folder. And by the way, I'm glad that I remembered here. If you send me an email about some issues you're having with the assignments, and I read it today, once I'm done with the lecture today, feel free to talk to me about that, and we can go through it, because in a lot of cases when I get some emails from you guys telling me that I'm having this issue, I'm having this problem, it's very, very hard for me to understand what's going on in your side without being able to see what you're seeing in your side. So that's why I reply to most of these emails by, after the class, let me go through what you're going through. Let me have a look at it. That way I can tell what's going on in your side. Anyway, so if I want to, and I can do that totally, redirect my outputs, including the error message, to a very, very special file called a null. And we said, consider the null as the black hole, which simply means anything is going to be sent to there is simply going to disappear. And that's going to be a big deal. We're going to use it a lot. And we said we utilize this file a lot when it comes to if statements, because again, whenever you have an if statement, your decision about which branch of code is going to be executed simply relies on the exit status of that if statement. If the command that you're going to type will have an exit statement of 0, that is going to be treated as true, and then whatever underneath that if statement is going to be executed. And if it's a exit status is not 0, a non-zero value, that simply means there was an error. And if there's an error, then the else block of code is simply going to be executed. So that was something that we talked about too. We also talked about piping, and piping is simply using the outputs of one command as an input for another command. So if I, for example, said cat and new, let's go ahead and list the items so I would know which one of them. Okay. Let's say cat names. Okay, so that's supposed to print the content of files. Now I want to use that as that output as an input for grib and I'll put, for example, Adam. And you can see here, he's simply showing me or highlighting Adam out of the list. Now I can use that. I can sort them if I want to and use that as an input for the grip. So you will notice now it's going to have access to the cat, then the names, and then it's going to sort it alphabetically, and then it's going to show me Adam, which, well, he didn't actually sort anything in this case for some reason. Wait a minute. I think let me try again. I'm going to go sort names and then grip Adam. And that didn't sort them again. Let's see if I can sort them only. Why is that not working? Huh. Well, sort is supposed to sort the content of the file. But for some reason, it's not working. Let me see. Why is that? Let's try again. If I try to sort it here, and still not doing what I think it should be doing. Let's see here. I'm going to go with another file, something a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go with head, for example, and I will go loops.sh and I'm going to pipe that grip, and I will say, for example, 4, and I'm going to ask him to sort it. Okay, he's showing me the sorts. Now, if I cat loops.sh, well, it is a long file. So let's see here. I'm going to go to the head. Okay, so the first page of it. And then I'm going to grip 4, and I'm going to sort them. So he's showing me this part only, which is what you see here. This followed by this. And again, since it's already here, X and Y, so I think it worked with no issue. So let's clear things and continue. Now, piping again, let me just remind you about that. Piping is when you have multiple commands and you separate them with that symbol here. And then the output of the first command is going to be used as an input for the second command. Again, so far, this is what we covered so far. Today, we're going to talk about something very, very important and somehow new. And the concept we're covering today is called file descriptors. Now, file descriptors, again, every single file that you are simply going to be processing will be associated with a number. And those numbers are going to be utilized to access to the files, to read from the files, to write to the files. So we need to know what are these file descriptors, and we need to know how do we deal with them. Now, mainly, there are 3 file descriptors, very, very important, that you should know, which is file descriptor number 0 and 1 and 2. File descriptor number 0 is always associated with a standard input, which is something related to the keyboard as an input. File descriptor number 1 is for the standard outputs, which again, whatever message you're going to be seeing on the screen. And then file descriptor number 2 is for the standard errors. So those are the 3 file descriptors that you should be aware of. The number 0, number 1, number 2. And those numbers, again, we are going to learn today, how do we utilize these numbers when it comes to controlling the outputs and the inputs when we're going to write some scripting files. So whenever you want to redirect your outputs. Now, we know by default, when you type ls, it's going to be redirected to the standard output, which is the monitor that you have here. And we said whenever you want to redirect it, for ls, for example, I want to redirect it to letters.txt. That simply means whatever the result is going to be simply stored in that letters.txt. And this is something we covered. Now, you do have an option here, and this is, again, something that you don't have to do, but you do have that option. to type 1 here. 1 simply indicates that this is the file descriptor number 1, which is related to the standard outputs, and you simply redirecting it. So instead of showing it on the screen, we're redirecting the standard output to the letters.txt file. And that, again, bring me to the fact that when we were trying to show the standard errors, we had to type 2. And if I come here and say, for example, ls1, and if I go to cat letters.txt, you will see that it was just, oh, wait a minute. Did I misspell it? Yes, I misspelled it. It was supposed to go to letters with an S. And you can see here, we got the error. So this is how we redact. So this is the number that I was talking about. We have the 0 for the standard input, and we have 1 for the standard output, and we have 2 for the standard errors. Now here's more options that we have. Look what I can do. I can say ls, and I will say one of my folders here. So let me just go ahead and ls, which folder? I'm going to go with new folder. So I'll say ls new folder, and I'll say redirected 1 to good.txt, and I will say redirected 2 to bad.txt. So what's going to happen here? If the command was executed with no problems, then the standard output is simply going to be sent to the good.txt, and it's going to show me the content of the file. But if there's an error, the bad message is simply going to be, the error message is going to be sent to a file called bad text. Now, since there is no problem with this command here, you'll see that a new folder, new file should be created called good, and you can see it, good.txt. And if I type cat good.txt, you'll see the content here. And is there a bad? Here's bad. So let me just go ahead and say cat bad.txt. And you can see it's empty. Now let's go back to the same message. And just like how I made a mistake before, let's make a mistake here. ls1. And now if I press enter, and now if I go to bad cat bad.txt, you'll see that error message now is stored here. And you will notice also, let's go ahead to the good.txt, and you'll notice there's nothing there because, again, because the bad was executed, then the good text file was created, but there was nothing sent to it. And the bad, actually, the error message was sent to the bad text. So those are just options, that available options that you have. And you can redirect your outputs, as I said, using the 1 and the 2, and you can have them redirected into the 2 different files, or we can redirect them to the same file, just like how we used to do before. I can come here and say redirect and put and you'll just say bad good.txt. So if there is an error message, is going to be sent to the same file. If it's going to execute with no problems, it's going to be sent it to the same file. Those are, again, just options, extra options that you should be aware of when it comes to redirections. And let's continue. As I said, I'm going through the PowerPoint, so I will keep track on the topics that we're supposed to cover. We can redirect our outputs, again, just like how I did here. Let me just go back here to the good text. And if there's an error, we can redirect it to the div null. So if the execution of this command went with no problems, then send the result to the good text, and there is a problem, send the error message to the div null file. So this is, again, everything about the standard input and standard output and standard errors. Now let's talk about standard inputs. Now with the standard inputs, again, if I go and type sort, and I can put a file here, or let's just use the CW, and I will say, let me choose it. Let me list the files. I'm going to go with new loops. Okay. I want something a little bit shorter. So let's say test out, cat test out. It's empty. Let's say results.txt cat. So I do have some lines here. So if I type CW, which again, count words, and I say, what was the file name? Results.txt. Oh, wait a minute. He didn't find WC, my bad. Word count. He's showing me all these numbers. Now, we said if we want to actually use the content of the file, we can simply use the less than simple, and it will work. And you can see it works. Now, what we can do in addition to this, just like how we did with the file descriptor for the output and errors, we use numbers. We can also use numbers here, and that will not change anything. I will get the same results. Now, there's a reason why I'm going through this, because we are going to utilize these numbers later, and it's very, very important to understand how do we utilize them. But at this point, I'm just showing you that you can actually use those inputs, those redirections, and associate them with the numbers that we learned about the 0, about the 1, about the 2. Piping, as I said before, again, the output of one command simply will be sent as an input for the second command. And that shows you that how the file descriptor 1 interact with the file descriptor of 0. Whenever you do the piping, the standard output 1 is going to produce a result, and that result is going to be used as a standard input for the other commands. So let me just make sure that I get this right. Yes. Now, one other thing you should know about standard inputs and standard outputs and standard errors, that piping, whenever you want to do piping, as I said, piping is when you use the standard output for one command as the standard input for the other command. But the question is, what if there is an error? Like, for example, you're running a command, and the command that you're starting with simply will produce an error. Then that error message, again, if you think about it, should be used as an input for the other command. But that's not the case. It doesn't work that way. You will not, again, would not send that standard error message as an input for the next command. That doesn't work that way. But the question is, what if I actually want to do that? Okay. What if I actually want to do that? Let me show you an example. What do I mean by that? Let's say I'm going to go with ls, and I will say again, new folder. And again, remember here, this is going to list the content of that folder. So let's go ahead and put -L. So you see, it showed me a lot of lines here. So what if I want to actually use that and pipe it to a sort command? And you see here, it's simply going to sort them, as you can see here. Now, the question is, what if I have a problem? For example, let's say ls1. Let's see what's going to happen if that's the case. And you can see here, it's just showing me the standard error message. Okay, but it's not sorted. Let's say if I just came here and put the ampersand, this is where I'm going to be able to send it. But again, it's not doing anything at this point. So I think this is not a really good example for the bash command. But maybe the word, no, it's not the case. But again, this simple here that I'm highlighting here simply means that if a standard error message was produced by this command, you can use it as an input for the sort command here. That's how to do. But I think the example that I'm using here is not actually doing what it's supposed to. But by default, again, only the actual output of a command with no errors will be used as an input for the other command. And that's how piping simply works. Okay, now let's move on and let's talk about something else. How do we do redirecting for outputs in scripts? We're going to learn how do we do redirecting for outputs. We're going to learn how do we do redirection for inputs. And we're going to learn how do we do redirection for errors in scripts. So we're going to see how do we utilize all these features in a script. Okay, so one by one, let's go ahead and cover those. Let me just make sure that I'm moving correctly here. So redirecting output in script. The idea here is Very simple and very easy. And let me just create a script file here to start with. And I will say touch redirect. Let's call this one 1.sh, and let's chmod, and we'll go user plus x so I can execute it, and it's called redirect.sh. And now change directory to the main, and then vim, and then we're talking about redirectory, and we start with, oops, I again. Ben bash. And I think, let me fix this. Okay, so here it is. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna check. I'm gonna put, let's put this. The example that I'm going for here is that I'm gonna write a command that's gonna be followed by a file name. And I'm gonna test if that file name, which is again the redirect 1.sh, is gonna check if that file that I just typed after the command is actually a text file or not. So what do we do here? We come here and say if file, and then we type the $1. Now the $1 here, again, represent the arguments. We said the $0 represent the scripting file, for example, redirect1.sh. $1 is the first argument, $2 is the second argument. In this case, I'm just going to have one of them here. And then after that, I'm going to use that output, that file. If it's a file, I'm going to grep the text file part of it. If there's a text part there. And I'm going to redirect here the output to div\node. So because again, I'm not interested in showing the results. I'm just trying to check if the file that I'm going to read with the $1 is actually a text file. That's what I'm looking for. Now, what do we do here? We simply then, we're going to echo a message on the screen. Let me just give this a tap. And the tap, basically, I'm going to put that name of that file, and I'll just say is a text file. This is something we've been doing with no problems. Else, echo, and we'll put $1 is not a text file. Okay. Now, by default, fi, if I run this, let me just get out of here. And let's try to run it. But now remember here, as I'm going to try to run it, I'm going to have to put a name of a file here. So I'm going to go with names. And I'm not sure if there's names.txt. Here's what I need to do. I'm going to go ahead and say ls hyphen. So it is names with no files. Okay. So I'm going to come here and say names. Wait a minute. Oh, my bad. I was supposed to take the vim away. I forgot. Well, look at this. Name is not a text file. Well, that's weird because it should be a text file. Let's see here. If I type file, names. Names open as a director. Okay, or sorry, name file. And it says here it's a text file. Did I misspell text there? Let's go ahead back to the vim. No, it is text. Let's see, why is it acting that way? So, oh, wait a minute. I think I need to put a space here. Let's see if that's going to change anything. Okay, files, names. Let's try to run it again. Nope. It's not a text. Well, that's weird. It should be a text. Let's see here. I'm going to go back to the them in this case. So I'm going to try to see. I'm saying if file $, is, and then I'm trying to grab the text part of it and redirecting. Obviously, this is producing an error message for some reason. Let me try and see if I can put the text between double quotations. Maybe. I don't think that is the problem. So we have if file $, which is the first. And you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come here and just type file $1, and let me echo it. Let me just run it. I want to see what's the output of this. And then let me put grep text. I just want to see what's the result of this before we put the if statement. Because again, let me exit. Why is he not? Right and Q. More file to edit. Okay. I think because I typed. Okay. Let me just take this one away. Okay, now let's run it now. Name is not a file. See, it's not even running the first command. Because if I type file names, maybe the name, and then after that I put grep text. Oh, that's not producing anything. Oh, I think I know. Maybe I have to put, and now it's working. Now it's working. So I got it. Let me just fix this really fast. I have to come here and put redirecting. And now it's actually doing what's supposed to be doing. Okay, that was my mistake. I have to put the whole path for it to work. So I'll just go back to the Vim section of it. And let me take this part. The whole point here again is that I'm checking if the file names is a text file. And I said, if it's a text file, show it to me. Now remember here, I can come here and do the following. I will say base name and put the $1 here. So it will only show me the $. So I can do the same thing here. And close it just to make sure that it works better. Now, if I go back here and run it, you can see here, names is a text file. So now it's working perfectly fine. So this is what traditionally, I'm sorry I spent some time here just trying to figure this out. And it was just like, I have to put the whole directory for it to work. Anyway, I got it to work. So that's a good thing. Now, let's go back to the Vim. And let me show you, how do I redirect those to the standard outputs and standard inputs. So here's what's going to happen. Traditionally, this message will be printed on the screen, and this message was going to be printed on the screen, depending on if that text file that I just typed was an actually text file or not. Here's what we can do. This is very important. And it's not going to make any difference, to be like honest, but it's important to understand that if I type greater than and with 1, that simply implies that this echo message should be sent to the direct output. Okay. And this is what's going on by default, by the way. So whether I type it or not, no change will be applied. But again, if I want to control and redirect the output inside a script, I can simply type this section, add it to the echo, and that simply means it's going to be sent to the standard output, which is a screen in this case. Now, in this case, I can also redirect this one to 2 instead of 1. And we said the file descriptor number 2 is used for standard errors. So this error message, this echo message that I have for the else statement is going to be associated with as an error message, and it's going to be using the standard error or the file descriptor number 2 to print the message on the screen. Now, for you as a user, you simply would not be able to tell the difference because it's just 2 messages that are going to be printed on the screen. One of them if there is a problem, and one of them if there is no problems. But you should know that if, in this case, if the command in the if statement was executed with the exit status of 0, that implies that this message will be sent to the standard output message, which is the screen. But if it's if the command was executed with an exit status of 1 or any other number that's not 0, that simply means the message is going to be sent for the standard error message. Now, again, if I just exit and save my work and run it again, you again will not see any different because we know by default error message and out message are going to be sent to the terminal. Now, why am I saying this? Because this is the beginning of how do we have control over how do I redirect my outputs inside a script file. And to do so, we need to add a special command at the top of your script file. And I'm going to do it in this area. And we're going to use a very, very special command. It's called exec, execute. Okay. And this execute or exec message or command will give you a choice to redirect the results of your screen, and instead of sending them to, again, the standard output, to send them to an actual file. So here's what we can do. We can come here and say exec redirect, but you're gonna have to tell me what you try to redirect the outputs of the standard output to a file. We'll call it let's say file D1. Okay, and I can do the same thing here to, oh, you know what? They will say, let's call it good dot text, and this we'll call it bad dot text or error dot text. Error dot text. So this is something you have to start with. You start at the beginning by writing this commands. That simply means if you have an echo message and you want that echo message to be sent to a file instead of the output, standard output, then you start with this command here. And if there's an error message and you want to send it to a text file to store the error messages, then you do it this way. And again, no change is going to be applied here, by the way. This is going to be kept as it is. This is going to be kept as. So this is supposed to, again, send this message that's supposed to be printed to the standard output. But here I'm telling him whatever the standard output is, redirect it to a good file. Okay, so those two commands are going to be utilized. This command here is going to be utilized a lot in this chapter. Every time you want to redirect your output to a file inside a script file, you have to start with the exec, and you tell me what's the file descriptor that you're trying to working on here. So this is for the standard output, this is for the standard error, and there simply means whatever you're trying to send a message to the standard error or the standard output, you associate that with the files that you see here. Now, of course, here's what I can do. I could come here and send another message, type echo, and let's say this is a good case. And I can go direct, and I can redirect it again to the same standard output, and I can come here and do the same thing. This is a bad case. Echo, and this is a bad case. Now let's get out of here, WQ. Let's try to run it again, and let's see what's going to happen. Oh, permission denied. Of course, permission denied. Let's just go ahead and fix that really quick. I don't have the authority and the permission to create any files in the root directory, so I need to actually specify where do I want to create those folders. Of course, I can create them only inside my folder. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm going to my folder. Let's run it again. Clear. Let's try to run it now. And you can see nothing is showing here. Now, if I go and type ls hyphen, it will show me that there is a bad text and there's a good text. Now, if I go to cat bad text, it's I think this is an old one. So let's go to the good text. And you can see here, name is a text file, and this is a good case. Let me try to run the example again. Instead of names, I'm going to put name one. And you can see there's nothing there. Now, if I go back to the bad text, you will see, oh, it's still not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Okay. The error was supposed to be sent to the bad text, but it didn't. Let's see here. Did it send it to the good text? This is a bad case. Wait a minute. Let's go back to the Vim and see what did I do there. So this is the echo. This is supposed to go to 2, and 2 is it? Oh, error. My bad. Error. Let's go cat hyphen error dot text. Is not a text file. Okay. How come you didn't show me the other one? Because it's error text. Here's the error text. But let me go back to the Vim. Oh, yes, of course, because I didn't redirect it to the standard error output. So let's go ahead and redirect it again. If I go back and run it, the names, you can see here, there's nothing here. And if I go and show me errors, it will see that both of them are going to. So you can see here, let's go back to the Vim and start fresh and talk about this. So you can see that how I can redirect my standard outputs and my standard errors to different directories, different files, as you can see here. Okay, so we start by specifying where do we want to redirect the standard output, the standard errors, to which files, and then by default, again, if I don't have those two lines, then the message that you see here are simply going to be printed on the screen because the standard output is the terminal monitor, terminal monitor, terminal monitor, terminal monitor, but I can actually redirect them to different files using the script that you're seeing here. So how about redirecting input scripts? Well, there's nothing different. It's going to be simply very similar to what we did here. To see here, 28. To redirect standard inputs, we are going to utilize the same concept, the same principle, but again, we're just going to use that concept to read from a file. So how do we get this part done? Let's go ahead and run it here. You know what, here. If I want to actually read from a file, so I will just say, and can you guess the number here is supposed to be 0, and you have to tell me which file you're going to try to read from. And in this case, I will go with names again. So, oh, sorry, I want to redirect, yes, using the names. So names, that's the file that I'm going to be reading from. And all I have to do in this case, let's go ahead and type while read. And we are going to type the file names when we're going to read from. Wait a minute, let me see here. Yeah, we're going to read from a file. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not going to be making any mistakes here. We're going to use that. No, we're not going to use that file. While read line. I'm trying to remember here. Let's see. Okay, list, write input. Okay, let's see here. Lines or line. And we'll go with do echo. And I'll just print here line or line uppercase. So that's my line. And I'm going to put $sign line because that's the variable that I have there. And I'll just keep it that way. Let's just keep it simple. Done. So we are going to read the lines from a file. Now, I don't like the fact I'm reading from names. I want to use a different file, but let's just go ahead and use names. What I'm going to do with names, I'm going to go and modify it so I can have multiple lines. So let's go ahead and exit QW. And now if I go vim names, you'll see that I have those. Let's go ahead and put them in separated lines. So let's go ahead and click exit. And now if I go to the bash, try to run it, it worked, but it didn't print anything. So let's go ahead and try to take, we're going to try to take those out. So I just want to utilize this part. So let me just explain this code. By typing this command here, oh, wait a minute. By typing this command here, I'm telling my script file here is that I'm going to be reading from a file called names. Okay. So I'm going to read lines of that name. And I'm simply going to be going through that. So simply, as long as I can read from the file, I'm not getting to the end of it. I'm supposed to be able to see the names printed on the screen. And let's see if that's going to be the case. Hopefully, we'll get that to work. So let's take this one away. And here we go. Line Adam, line Lulu, line Ali, line Baba. So you can see here, I was able, and look at this, just pay attention. I was able to read from a file line by simply typing this command. Okay, so the read command usually is used to read from the keyboard, but now instead of that, I'm using it to read from a file. And how do I redirect the file to my while loop here? By simply typing the command that you see here at the top. I'm redirecting the file names as an input for the read command that I'm going to be utilizing in this script. And that's simply what I just did here. So you can see here how those redirecting simply works in a script file. You have to actually tell me which file you're going to be utilizing to send the standard output to, and the standard input to read from, and the standard errors to. And when it comes to standard inputs, you just tell me which file I'm going to read from, and you continue with it normally. But when it comes to standard outputs, you have to tell me which echo statement you want it to be sent as a standard output, and which echo statement you want to use to send as a standard error message. So that's, again, a very, very simple method to redirect in a script file. Let's see, what else do we have? We actually, in addition to the 0 and 1 and 2, the standard inputs and outputs and error messages, file descriptor, sorry, we can utilize other numbers and get them connected to other input and output files. So not necessary to stick with 0 and 1 and 2. We can actually have your other files, again, instead of the standard input and standard output and standard error, you can have other file descriptors. And those file descriptors that are available for you goes from 3 to 8. So you got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. There are, again, total 9 available file descriptors that you can actually use. So the question is, how do I actually use them? Well, it's very simple and very, very straightforward. And let's go ahead and have a look at that. So previously, in the examples that I showed you before, I utilized standard 0, 1, and 2 and showed you how do they work. But that's not the case all the time. You simply can have 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 8. And I'm going to come, and this time I'm going to call this one my newest, or my new file. And I'm going to give it a number, which is my new file 10. Okay. And this is going to be, again, a standard. It's not a standard output, but again, the output that I'm going to be actually producing are going to be simply send to this file. Again, I'm just going to test this. I'm going to say echo test 1, test 1, and very, very important that you have to redirect it to that file 3. And I'm going to go here and type echo test 2, and same thing, redirect it to that file, and then echo test 3, and redirect it to that file. Now, here's what you need to understand. The difference between what I'm doing here and what I did before. What I'm doing here is I am associating a file with the new file descriptor, which is 3. But previously, when I used 1, for example, not here, when I used 1 here, I'm redirecting the standard output to that file. Again, results probably would not be different, but we know that when we're utilizing file descriptor to get the job done. Now, it's very, very important to understand one thing here, and let me just show you what do I mean by that. Let me exit and save it, and let me try to run it here. And you will notice that simply I would not see, oh, wait a minute, bad descriptor. He didn't like 3 for some reason. Permission denied again. Let's just go ahead and fix that. I have to put, wait a minute. So that should fix the problem of permission. And now it's working. Okay. Now, if I go to, I called it, if I go here, ls hyphen, I call a new file something. Let's see here. Oh, here, my new file 10. So if I say cat, my new file 10, you'll notice that test 1, test 2, test 3. Okay. Now look what's going to happen if I go back to the same file, but I'm going to change this one to be test 10. Test 10, test 20, and test 30. By doing that, and I want you to pay attention when I'm going to run it now, I'm just going to run it, and then I'm going to go and cat it again, and you can see test 10, test 10. So that simply tells me that when you actually apply and use that script, simply going to erase whatever content you have in that file, and they're going to start with the new content. Now, what if I actually want to add to it? The solution for this case is very simple. All you have to do here, and let me just go ahead and show you what you have to do. And instead of using the greater sign here, double it. Come on, insert mode. Oh my God, what's going on here? My terminal stuck. Oh, here we go. Sometimes I just lose connection to the terminal. So here it is. So let's go ahead, and now I'm going to go and take the 10 away, the 20 away, and keep it as 1, 2, 3. Now remember here, the content of the file itself, now it was 10, test 20, test 30. Now after this, Let's try to run it. And let's go back to the file itself, and you would notice how it was just added to it. So you can see here that we can actually redirect our standard input, standard output, standard errors if we want to. We can also use other file descriptors if we want to associate them with other, file descriptors with other files instead of the standard input and output and errors. You can use other descriptors, and those descriptors that are available for you are 3 all the way to 8. Okay, so of course here you can mix and match multiple files if you want to. That should be also acceptable with no problems. Okay, let's see here. One of the things that you should know that whenever you apply, let's go back to our Vim here. So you can see here that I'm redirecting all these inputs to a file. Sorry, those outputs, I'm directing them to a file, my new file 10, using a file descriptor 3. The question is, what if I want to go back to the standard output? Okay, so instead of sending them to a file, I want them to be sent to a standard output file. Okay, so how do we achieve that? Again, it's not going to be a big problem. It's very simple. All we have to do in a case like that is to update our file here and start. Now here in a case like the one that you're seeing here, all these outputs are simply going to be sent to that text file. But here what's what we can do, and this is again an option, because sometimes you would like to send your outputs to a different file using a different file descriptor, and sometimes you want to go back to the standard output. So how do we fix this problem? Well, to do so, we need to, let's see here. Let me make sure that I get this right. So we have the execution tree here to be associated with this file. Okay, so let me make sure that I get this straight. Give me 1 sec. I am trying to reorganize my thoughts here. Let's see here. So we got the execute here. We're redirecting this. I just want to double check on one thing because I don't think I mentioned this. So I'm redirecting all these outputs to this file. The question is, what if I take those away? Okay, let's give this a try and run it. Now, if I go back and run it, it's because I didn't specify where it should be directed. It was automatically directed to the standard output. So if I want to actually fix this, I need to actually redirect them to the 3. That's something. So let's go ahead and put that and 3 and 3 and 3. My question, my case that I'm trying to do here is, what if I want to go back to, and so basically here after those lines, I want to echo back. I'll say this is test A, and echo this is test B, and echo this is test C. I want to redirect it. After I redirect those to the standard output here with the TypeScript 3, I'm going to redirect it back to the standard output 1, which is again the standard output, or the file descriptor 1. What can I do in a case like that? Let's see here. I'm getting a little bit confused here. So let's take this away. Oh, let me just keep this one here. What I'm going to do here, take this one away and put this as 1. And this is where I'm going to send my files, my outputs. Okay. And I'm going to come here and type ex. And I'm going to say, for example, 3. And I'm going to send 3 to 1, redirect 3 to 1. Okay. So here in this case here, I can take those away just to show you. And then after that, I will type 1, 2, direct sign of 3. Okay. So let's go ahead and have a look at what's going on here. I am redirecting. Let's just look here. In this case, I am redirecting the terminal 3 to 1. Sorry, the file descriptor 3 to 1. And on 1 here is the output, standard output. And then here I'm redirecting the standard output to this file. And this time I'm going to echo these messages. And then after that, in this case here, which I have a mistake here, I'm redirecting the standard output to 3. So let's see, after running this, what's going to be printed on the screen and what's going to be printed on the file itself. Let's go ahead and exit. And let's try to run it. Now remember here, the first one are supposed to be redirected to a file. The second ones were supposed to redirect it to the terminal. And you can see here that test A, test B, and test C are shown on the terminal, while if I go to my cat message, you'll see that test 1 and test 2 and test 3 are printed on the screen. So let me go back to the file to explain what just happened here. I am here at the top telling that the execution term, sorry, the file descriptor 3 is going to be redirected to the output, standard output, and the standard output is simply going to be directed to this file. So those commands, when they're going to be executed, simply they're going to be sent to the standard output, which is going to be again directed to the file that you see here. And after this 3 lines were actually sent to the file, I decided, you know what? Now I want you to go from the standard output to terminal 3. Okay, so this to the descriptor 3 and show me those messages on the screen. And that's where you saw them printed on the screen. So the first section here simply will imply that the standard output is going to be sending those results to the screen, to the file. And then after that, you went back to show the execution. So it's again, you're redirecting the outputs to go back to the terminal window. So that's 44. And let's continue. Okay, now redirecting input file descriptors. Let me check here. And just like how we did it with the outputs, we can do the same thing with the inputs if we want to. Okay, so instead of just using the standard input 0, the file descriptor 0 as a standard input, we can use other numbers if we want to. And again, remember the numbers are 3 to 8. And it should work with no problems, just like how it worked before. And we can actually redirect using from a keyboard and reading from a file at the same time. So let's just go ahead and take this out and show you how does that work. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take all these messages here. And I'm going to show you that I'm at a certain time, I'm going to be reading from a file. And then later, I'm going to be reading from the keyboard itself. So the first thing I'm going to do here, let's start with this. Standard, the 3 descriptor, and I'm going to redirect it to 0, which is, remember here, represents the keyboard. And then after that, I'm going to simply be reading from names. Let's go back to the names. So this is names. Let me just read from names. I will go read line and then echo $ line. And remember here, I redirect the inputs to simply read from this file. Now, if I want to do the opposite, I want to go back to read from the keyboard. All I have to do is to do the redirections like this, hyphen and 3. The ampersand and 3, sorry. And then after that, I can say read. I can show a message at the beginning, echo, enter your name. And of course, if I want to, I can put hyphen N here. And then after that, I can say read name and then echo $ name. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. As you can see here, I was reading from a file at the beginning, and then after that, I switched back to read from the keyboard. So it's very, very important to see the relationships between here. If you're going to be switching between files and the standard inputs and standard outputs, you always have to start with telling me what's the file descriptor that you're going to be utilizing to read from a file. Okay, so I'm redirecting 3 to the standard input, and I'm saying the standard input should read from a file, and then I'm going to be reading from a file. But if I want to go back and leave that standard file descriptor 3 and go back to reading directly from a file from the keyboard, we execute this line. So you can see here how these two lines are the opposite of each other. We queue and let's just run it again. Adam, which is the first line, and this time I'm going to go with Smith. And you can see here I was able to. So you can see how can we switch between reading from a file and reading from the keyboard. It's very, very important to understand how you write those commands. And we also saw how you can redirect your output to a file and redirect it back to the standard output files. Okay, now, what if, and this is very important, what if we want to use multiple of those file descriptors? And in other word, like I want to associate a file descriptor with a file descriptor, a number, and the number that I'm going to utilize for file descriptor with a file, and then I want to use it with another file later on, the same file descriptor number. Well, we can actually close the file descriptor by writing a very simple command. And the command that we're going to write is very simple. Let me just go back to the Vim. And just to show you, if after I'm done, for example, executing this line of code, here, let me just do it for an output. If I come here and say, and we'll say, for example, 6, and we're going to redirect it to a file called test me.text. So this is me redirecting my outputs. If I come here and type echo, and I'll say this is a test, and remember here you redirected to 6. Okay, now what I can do, I can free that descriptor file from this file, and then I can utilize it with another file if I choose to. And to do that, very simple, the command is to type again, same thing you did here, with one different, which is you type here the ampersand and hyphen. That way, after you're done with this operation, now this file descriptor is not available for you. So simply I cannot come here and type echo, this is test 2, and direct it to and 6 after this command. So this is how you close the file descriptor, so you will not allow to use it anymore. And remember here, if you started your redirecting by the double greater than, then you have to use it here as well to close it if you need to. So again, this is just to show you how do you close those file descriptors if you need to. Again, this is optional. But again, remember, because we are limited with how many file descriptors that we have. So sometimes, for example, as I said, we got 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. So how much of those that we have again? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 6 available. What if I need more? Well, all you have to do in a case like that is to make sure that if one of those file descriptors are not utilized anymore, you can again just close that file descriptor and utilize it with another one. We are getting closer to the end of this class, so let me just continue. In the PowerPoint, and this is something I want you to do it by yourself. There's an example which it's very, very simple and very easy, which shows you how can you read information from a CSV file and convert it to an SQL statement. Now, I'm not sure if you guys took a database management class before or not, but whether you took a class for database management or not, it's one of the simplest and easiest skills that you should know. But this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to understand what it is. It's simply, again, telling you if you have a CSV file that contain records, how do you read those records from that file line by line, and then extract the information that you need, and then you put them in a different format of a string, which is going to produce an SQL query. Now, in the book, I will highly recommend, because I don't have the CSV file available, and I don't want to create it right now because it's going to take a really long time for me to get the job done. But it's really, really not that big of a deal. I would suggest everybody here to go and have a look at this part in the PowerPoint and try to read it and see how exactly the work. There's a slide here that will show you the process one by one. It's very simple, very straightforward. One of the files simply going to be reading from, the other file you're going to be writing to. Okay, so the file they're going to be reading from is the CSV file, and the file you're going to write to is the SQL file. And all you have to do, again, redirect your input to that file that you're reading from. And then inside the while loop that you're going to be reading from that file, just output all these files to the standard output that you're going to use in your code. And then don't forget to redirect the output to, instead of the file, to redirect it to the actual standard output to show that you've completed the process. And it's really, really very simple, and it's not that big of a deal. Now, the rest or the remain of this chapter are really very simple and very straight, and I'm just going to go through them one by one. And let me just exit here. It doesn't have to do anything. Let me make sure that I got everything ready here. Yes. You can create files and folders and put them in a very, very special folder in the root directory. It's called the temp directory. Now, the word temp by itself means temporary. Now, temporary simply means files are going to be stored there for a period of time, and it's going to be erased and deleted by the operating system by itself. So I don't know how is this related to the topic of this chapter, but it's a skill that you should know and you should understand. So here's how it works. If you want to create a text file and you want to put some information in that text file, it's really easy. And we learned how do we do that. Very, very straightforward, very simple, not that complicated. But what I can do, I can create a temporary file inside that temporary directory. And then after that, I can start writing to it. And I know for sure, no matter how big that file will be, within a period of time, it will simply be erased and deleted from by the operating system. So let me just show you what do I mean by that. Oops, I'm typing in the chat box. Here we go, ls. So let's see here. We got the temp. So if I go change directory to TMP, and if I type ls, and you can see here, this is what's inside it. Now it looks really, really different comparing to all the files and folders that we created in the past. So let me show you how do I create a file, and let's see if it's going to be sent to this directory. So let me just get myself out. The command that we're going to use is mktemp. Okay. And then after that, put a -t to indicate that this file is supposed to be stored inside the temporary folder, and tell me what the name of the file. I will call it, for example, my temp file. Most importantly, you have to follow that with the dot, and you put 123 123 X's. Okay, and look what just happened. He's telling me that there is a file created inside the temporary folder, and that temporary file is called mytempfile.qk03gd. Now you may ask, where are these numbers are coming from? Well, those numbers are going to be assigned to the file by the operating system. It's going to be used as an identifier for that file. And remember here, I don't know about the schedule of the server that we're using here, but servers usually go to that file and folder and delete those files if they do exist. So if I go now to change temp, and if I go list, where is it? It should be here. Oh, here it is at the top. And you can see it here. And it looked like somebody already did something like that, because when I typed, oh, here it is. Somebody already did create a file before. I don't know when was this created. Let's go ahead and show it with a little bit more details. I can L. So here's my file that I just generated. You can see here, April 17th. And this one was created April 15th by a student. Huh. Okay, that's good to know that somebody's playing here. So you can see here, this is how we create. Now, again, I could create a directory if I want, instead of a file. And to do so, all you have to do is, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back here, and instead of T, put D. And I will say my temp dir. Now, if I run it, you'll see here immediately got that number. If I go and say ls-l again, it should be here somewhere. Here it is, my temp directory, and it has that number. Of course, it's going to be empty. There's nothing inside it. But you can see that I was able to create this file and create a folder. Now, after that, you can simply, again, write to that file, and you know that within a period of time, that file simply will be deleted, and all the information that will be there simply will be erased. Okay, I believe we're getting to the end of this chapter. We have a command called TT, simply T followed by EE. What is the T is used for? Well, it simply allows you to show the results on the screen and redirect it to a file at the same time. So previously, you have two choices. You'd either you show it on the screen or you direct it to a file. But the T, you can actually redirect it to a file if you want to. So let's just exit, get out of this folder, and let me just navigate to my original home file directory. Now, if I go list, you can see here those are my files and folders. I'm going to show cat results.txt. You'll see this is exactly what I have in there. I'm going to try to remove that and show you something. If I type date, this is going to show me, sorry, today's date. I can pipe that, type A, and I will say, what's the name of the file that I just, results. So you can see I was able to see the results on the screen. And now if I go and cat results, it's also going to show me the same value. This is just an option that you have. where you can show the results using the standard output, and we can pipe it using a T to redirect it to another file. So this, at this point, this here summarize what this chapter is all about. And if I want to just, I am going to need your help after the class. Of course, no problem. What I'm going to do here, I'm just going to start summarize what we said today. We talked about redirections, whether it's using a standard output, standard input, and standard errors. And we said we have something called file descriptor that is associated with those standard input and outputs and errors. We can redirect our standard input and outputs to files if we want to. We can use other file descriptors to associate with other files if we want to. We learned how do we change from the standard outputs to other file descriptors. We learned how do we mix and match standard inputs and standard outputs. It's all about redirections. How do you want the results for your scripting file to be shown or to be presented? Sometimes you want them on the screen, sometimes you want them on a file. And we probably covered all these topics. This is one of those chapters that I would say it's not the biggest deal, but still very, very helpful to know. How do you have full control over your outputs, and how do you control your outputs? So at this point, I am done with the class of today. Let me stop recording because it is important to, let's see here. Let me stop sharing. And now I'm going to stop recording.